If you're tuning into this explainer, you've clearly got an ambitious vision to launch a business in the vibrant city of Atlanta. And honestly, I absolutely love that energy. Whether you're opening a bustling restaurant downtown, launching a tech startup, or running a freelance consultancy right from your living room, you are taking a massive entrepreneurial leap. But hey, let's be real for a second. You're totally ready to launch, but you might be feeling kind of stuck on the paperwork, right? Municipal bureaucracy can feel like a giant puzzle, and one wrong turn can literally delay your grand opening by weeks. That's exactly why we put together this explainer. We're going to take all that confusing red tape and transform it into a clear, step-by-step roadmap so you can get legally operating without the massive headache. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover why you actually need this license, the essential documents you have to gather, the steps to apply, the fees and timelines, some common scenarios and mistakes to avoid, and finally, your next steps. All right, part one, why you need a license, or as I like to call it, the legal reality. So, skipping this step? Yeah, absolutely not an option if you want to operate legitimately in this city. First things first, we need to understand the local terminology. Atlanta doesn't actually call it a business license. Nope, they call it an occupational tax certificate. Basically, this is Atlanta's official, non-transferable authorization that's required for all businesses operating within city limits. And definitely pay attention to that phrasing. It's required to open, to maintain, or even to close your operations. De-jargonized? It's just your standard business license. And yes, even out-of-state businesses operating in Atlanta without a physical storefront are still subject to this. Moving right along to part two, essential documents. This is all about the prep work you need to do before you hit the portal. Trust me on this one, gathering your documents first is the ultimate secret to avoiding really frustrating delays later on. You might actually want to take a quick screenshot of this checklist because these are absolute non-negotiables. You're going to need a valid government-issued photo ID, your federal tax ID number, or EIN from the IRS, and your Georgia Secretary of State registration if you're an LLC or a corporation. But look closely at that last one, zoning approval, which gives you a ZLA number. You literally must have this zoning clearance before your license can even be approved. And yes, spoiler alert, even home-based businesses need to verify their zoning requirements.
Okay, you're also going to need two very specific documents, the SAVE and E-Verify affidavits. Basically, these are mandatory state forms that prove legal residency and employment eligibility in the U.S. So the crucial point is that both of these documents absolutely must be notarized before you upload them. I can't stress this enough. Do not submit unnotarized forms or your application will be instantly kicked back, and that's just going to cost you valuable time.
All right, on to part three. Steps to apply. Let's talk about navigating the system. Now that your paperwork is neatly organized and officially notarized, we can finally shift to the actual application phase. The good news, the City of Atlanta has heavily digitized this whole process for your convenience. It's all centralized on a platform called the ATL Biz portal. Step one is super simple. Just register an account on ATL Biz using a valid email address. Step two, you'll complete the digital application and upload those PDFs you just prepared. And finally, Step three is paying the applicable fees. Now keep in mind, the Office of Revenue won't even initiate their internal review of your application until that initial payment successfully clears. So you're probably wondering, how long is this actually going to take? Well, that depends entirely on how you apply. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference in processing speeds. If you walk into the City Hall Office of Revenue in person, you can actually walk out with a temporary 30-day operating permit in about 30 to 60 minutes. Pretty fast, right? But if you want to avoid the trip entirely, the online ATL Biz route takes about 7 to 10 business days for final approval. Mailing it in? Yeah, you're looking at a massive 6 to 8 weeks. For most modern entrepreneurs, that 7 to 10-day online window is definitely the absolute sweet spot for managing your launch expectations. This brings us to part four, fees and timelines. Let's look at the 2026 math. Let's get right to the single most common question I hear from entrepreneurs. Exactly how much is this going to cost me? The baseline number you need to know for the 2026 tax year is $191. That's the new base administrative fee for the City of Atlanta. For years, this fee just sat at a much lower $75, but recent structured fee adjustments bumped it up to offset municipal administrative costs. But hold on, remember, that is just the base fee. Let's break down the actual invoice formula into plain English, because your final cost is a combination of a few different factors. You've got your $191 admin fee. Next up is a $50 zoning review fee. Then the city charges a $50 base flat tax, which actually covers your first $10,000 in gross receipts. Finally, there's a $25 fee per employee. But hey, good news, your very first employee is completely exempt from that one. Now, if your business makes over $10,000 in gross receipts, a variable tax rate kicks in, and that rate is completely dictated by your NAICS code. Basically, the North American Industry Classification System code determines your specific tax class, which ranges from 1 through 6. The logic here is pretty straightforward. Lower margin industries get placed in lower tax classes with lower rates, while higher margin businesses fall into the higher tax classes. You'll apply this specific rate to every single $1,000 you make over that initial 10 grand. Moving to part 5, scenarios and mistakes. Essentially, don't let this be you. Let's look at some real-world scenarios to keep you out of regulatory trouble and maybe even save you some cash. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that there's a massive shortcut for specific regulated professionals. If you're a standard commercial business, you're doing that gross receipts math we just talked about. But if your business is composed of state-licensed professionals, think doctors, CPAs, lawyers, architects, you actually have a choice. You can completely bypass the gross receipts calculation and just opt to pay a flat fee of $400 per licensed practitioner. For high-earning professional firms, this is an absolutely incredible advantage. Another really common mistake is assuming this tax certificate is the only thing you need. Depending on your industry, special activities require extra regulatory permits before your main certificate can even be issued. Selling alcohol or running a pawn shop? You're going to need clearance from the police department. Opening up a new restaurant? Environmental health has to clear you first. Want to hang a big commercial sign out front? The Office of Buildings has to grant a permit for that. And please, definitely heed this geographic warning. Your physical address matters immensely. The City of Atlanta limits are highly specific. If you're operating just slightly north in suburbs like Sandy Springs, Roswell, or Marietta, the process we're covering today literally does not apply to you. Those are completely distinct municipalities with their own separate licensing requirements and portals. Always, always verify your actual jurisdiction. Finally, part 6, next steps, how to stay compliant. Okay, so you paid your fees, you navigated the portal, and you finally have your certificate in hand. What happens next? Well, you have to renew it every single year. The strict end-of-year deadline is December 31st. If you miss this date and just continue to operate, you're going to get hit with a 10% penalty on what you owe, plus 1% interest for literally every month you're late. Even worse, you could face citations or a required court appearance. When you do renew, you'll also need to provide financial documentation, like a tax return or a profit and loss statement, just to officially prove your gross receipts for that next billing cycle. Let's move on and see how this builds our overarching understanding. I want you to remember this quote. A business license is not just a piece of paper. It's a critical component for starting, maintaining, or even closing a business in Atlanta. It truly is the foundational legal bedrock of your entire enterprise. Before we wrap this explainer up, a brief but vital disclaimer. Municipal rules, tax formulas, and digital portal requirements do change, as we obviously saw with those recent fee increases. As part of your standard due diligence, you should always verify the most recent updates and requirements directly with the City of Atlanta Office of Revenue, just to make absolutely sure you've got the latest info. You now possess the complete, structured roadmap to confidently handle your municipal licensing. You know the essential documents, the fees, the portal steps, and the pitfalls to avoid. You are officially prepared. So the only question left to ask is, you've conquered the red tape, so what groundbreaking business are you bringing to Atlanta? Get out there, get registered, and start building your dream.